Hello and welcome to my active engagement class reflection number 2 for Module 2, Bridging Research to Practice. I am Renee Puckett, and these are some of the highlights and reflections that I've had since our class. Starting with the What Did You Know section in the quiz on the different leadership and theorists. This was a great time to kind of analyze for myself, like what I retained from the reading. I gave myself some emojis here for the theories. I felt like I had learned those, retained those, and was able to score pretty well on those on the quiz that we had during class. However, I did reflect that when it came to the actual theorists, that was more difficult for me to remember. So as I was reflecting on that, and I kind of know myself a little bit, that I lean more on the practitioner side. When I was reading, I really gravitated directly, immediately right to the theories. What did they say? How would it apply? How would this look in practice versus the actual historical context of the researcher? While I know that is very important, it was just interesting to kind of get to know myself and what I leaned towards because some of those theorists I needed to double check when we were doing our quiz. So my reflection, more of a practitioner than researcher, although both are important. We then moved to the reflective bridge. That was a great time to transition because it had some opportunities to share those current roles that our classmates are seeing in with themselves with those leadership practices and theories and their current leadership. So this was a great way to connect the theory to practice, and it was really helpful for me to hear other colleagues to hear how they're connecting current practices and or their current leadership to leadership theories. I wasn't able to share here during class, but the one that I connected to the most is for sure situational leadership. I think taking a look at people in terms of tasks, where you can meet them in terms of their readiness and their ability, is a way that leaders can see people for who they are with a certain specific task and situation. Just because you are good at analyzing data as a PLC does not necessarily mean that you're good at unpacking standards. So instead of just seeing a PLC or a person for who they are and who they present in totality, really looking at those situations and matching your leadership style to their readiness. Moving on, we did Jeopardy. This was very helpful. We looked at the North Carolina standards for school executives. Here are some notes that I took that were key takeaways for me. I really appreciated when Dr. Newsom said that you could kind of wordsmith some of these together to fit into multiple categories. I found that that's what I was doing, and her words were very comforting as we looked at, yes, so some of these, especially with school improvement, because school improvement is all over all of those executive standards, really looking at the wording could have you be in between two. And when we were playing Jeopardy, I felt like that. I do know that some are just really dead on in certain categories, but there are some that might be able to fit. So that was helpful. Looking at keywords was noted in our class. That was also helpful when you're looking at that, especially like external, public, and keywords that are going to help you identify which standard. Really being knowledgeable and intentional with your standards. And so my reflection as a leader is, what am I doing to move my school forward within these executive leadership standards? So really looking at them individually and saying, how am I completing all of these bulleted tasks? What am I doing to move my school forward? And my other reflection is, I have a lot to continue to learn and read with these executive standards, but I appreciated the way that we were able to engage with them. Finally, we had this 7th grade ELA scenario. This was very helpful to do with our learning group. I love doing walkthroughs in a school building with other people, so you can go in and you can debrief exactly what you just saw. And I felt like that simulated that kind of environment, even though we are all virtual in different places. So reading a case study, debriefing with our learning circle was extremely helpful. Some key notes that I took away, ratings are a conversation. I loved when Dr. Newsom talked through this. They are exactly like, what did I see? But this is kind of the baseline for when you meet with a teacher. They are the start of the conversation. So the question that was prompted, like, tell me how you did this. And those types of reflective questions to kind of share back with the teachers to know that your ratings can change. The goal is to grow them as a professional. That was one of my biggest takeaways and something I've been reflecting on. How can we grow these teachers as professionals that is the part and the point of these evaluation tools, and we have to do them anyway, so we might as well make them helpful and impactful. And then finally, the evidences for teacher standards. That was an extremely helpful document. I had never seen that before, and that was really helpful to see what how you would score each teacher in each category. I wanted to end with my biggest takeaway from the reading. It wasn't something we got to talk about in our learning circle group, and it didn't come up during our class session. So I just wanted to note it, just so you all know that it was a big takeaway for me. So in our text, it talked about Philip Hellinger and Ronald Heck, and they did 40 studies over 3 different categories. And what they were talking about is this idea of mediative effect. And so it was talking about how principals, if they are engaged and they are engaged with either behavior systems or practices within the school, the student achievement is enhanced. But the reverse of that is also true. So if a principal is disengaged or is not putting a priority in an area, especially with instructional leadership, then the student achievement is not enhanced. And so what I really have reflected on this is that the principal can affect student achievement through other people. This is kind of merging distributed leadership and all of the different things we've been learning about. But I loved the idea of the principal affecting achievement through others. It is a team effort. We have to have everybody, all stakeholders on board. And that's really looking at influential teachers. So who are those influential teachers that can come on board, help with new initiatives? You know who they are. They're the teachers that other people listen to. They have the ear of others. And so how can you be strategic in that way? So I really loved this idea of the mediated effect. And it's been something that stuck with me past our reading. Thank you and have a great day.